Hey everyone, this is Alexandra Metters of galacticconnection.com, and I have a very big surprise for all of you today. Many of you have been asking me for this over the years to get together with David Icke, and by George, here we are. I would like all of you to just hang tight, check out his website at davidicke.com, and there will be banners on my site that you can click on to go directly to his worldwide wake up tour and check out all the locations that he's going to be cruising through. Now, David is coined as being one of the most fearless and controversial writers and public speakers in the world today. He reminds us that we must get off of our knees and understand that the reality we live in is actually a program which oppresses us and influences the way in which we perceive life and ourselves. What was once seen to be a promising career in professional soccer at the ripe old age of 15 came to an abrupt end for David when he faced a diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis and the daily misery of coping with the pain. Yet, through a series of amazing synchronicities, David found his stride by becoming a newspaper, radio, and television journalist, as well as a sports presenter with the BBC. Huge realizations were gained when David then became the national spokesman for the British Green Party, which he states, quote, helped him realize what an irrelevance the mainstream media and politics are at informing the public with what is really going on in the world, unquote. Circuiting more than 50 countries, writing over 40 books. Is it 40 books, David, or 20?
It's somewhere in between now.
Okay. David Icke has become the epitome of an expert researcher on the history of the hidden hand that runs this world and the people within this matrix. He brought forth the biggest secret rarely told regarding a group of reptilian humanoids called the Babylonian Brotherhood, who control humanity, including many prominent figures such as George W. Bush, Queen Elizabeth II, Dick Cheney, etc. His presentation on the totalitarian two-step and the problem reaction solution modus operandi model have changed truly the truth seekers' perspectives out there permanently. David undeniably causes all of us to see our lives with clarity and purpose, motivating us to break free from this human enslavement. So, hey, David, what'd you think? I just wrote that.
I think I'll quit while I'm ahead.
Oh my God. So everyone, David is launching his huge world wake up tour and also his amazing book called The Phantom Self. And you're going to be traveling through a gazillion different countries, it looks like.
Yeah, I'm starting in London in June, and then I go through Australia and New Zealand in July and August, and then New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco in September, and then I go all over Europe, and then after Christmas I pick it up again, and away we go to other places. And
oh my gosh,
there's a kind of a reason for that. Ever since I had my own, well, you know, people say I had my awakening. We have the start of the awakening because it's a ongoing process of pulling back and ripping away the if you like, the onion skin layers of programming, yeah, so the true self can express itself. And you know, people talk about seeking enlightenment. We are enlightened. That's the point. What stops us accessing that, if you like, enlightenment, that expanded awareness, are the programs from cradle to grave, which I explain in some detail in Phantom Self, how it's done. That give us a fake reality and a fake identity of self, which is what I term the phantom self, as opposed to the real self, which is pure awareness. And when I therefore started my awakening and the layers started to peel off, I became aware that the world was very different to the one I'd thought was the world before. And as the synchronicity of my life unfolded, so information was coming from all directions in personal experiences, people I met, books, documents, and it was all pointing in a certain direction. And 26 years later, to the month, since it started in March 1990, consciously anyway. It's still going on, and we're going deeper and deeper in the rabbit hole as more and more layers come off, because, you know, anyone who's researching this from a point of view of, I'm not coming from a belief system that I want to uncover the information to confirm. I want to know the truth. And if that's outside of my current belief system, well, that's fair enough. I want to know the truth. And when you do that, and that's your intent, your own journey and the uncovering and communication of information are the same thing. Because when you go with that, I just want to know the truth, and you mean it, and there are no-go areas because my belief system couldn't survive if I go there, then the world is not just a little bit like we didn't think it was, or we thought it was. It's nothing like we thought it was. The world we think we're living in and the world we're actually living in are so extraordinarily different that even within the alternative media, people will, just as others do in the mainstream, will by reflex action dismiss concepts, dismiss possibilities on the basis not of them being checked out, being investigated, but on the basis of them being so different to what they've believed is actually possible. And, you know, if we're going to really turn this around, and I'm sure we are, though the challenge is enormous.
But we're doing it. We're doing it. We're definitely doing it. And actually, I want to ask you, this is such a burning question for me. Galactic Connection is world renowned for implant removal process.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And we're very, we do a lot of research because we're able to look at the profiles of the people that are coming through and the types of challenges, childhood issues, psychic attack, things like that. And you say through your book and your information that the perception programming starts when you leave the womb. And I wanted to ask you, well, what about the process before you incarnate, you know, when you're looping?
Yeah, I mean,
you know, it just seems like it doesn't start at the womb. It starts much earlier than that.
Yeah, but I mean, what I'm doing is picking it up at the point where most people can relate to it starting. Of course, there's that great line, death is no cure for ignorance. And thus, just because you leave the body doesn't mean you become, 100% all-knowing and enlightened just because of that. The body's another level of the focusing of attention. And what phantom self is the focus of attention of our awareness on the five-sense world. So the five-sense world seems to be all that exists. And to get an understanding or a grasp on the five-sense world and the nature of self, then you're looking for five-sense information. You're looking for five-sense explanations. And so, you know, the book before this one was called The Perception Deception. And it doesn't matter whether it's pre-womb, in-womb, after-womb. It all comes down to those same two words, perception, deception. Perception is everything, because from perception comes action or no action. What you will support, what you will not support, what you'll believe, what you won't believe, what you do, what you won't do. Perception is everything. And so there are multiple levels of and techniques of perception downloading. You've got everything from implants to the education system to the mainstream media to peer pressure, what the whole foundation of it is is to get us to believe in a world that seems to be one thing, but is actually nothing like it. And crucially, to get us to believe in a false self-identity.
Totally agree.
In our prime form, in our infinite eternal form, if you like, we are pure awareness, the state of being aware. And what then knocks people away from that path, that understanding, whatever, is the world of form. So, which is illusory anyway, when you get deeper into it. So from form, or a self-identity with form, come what I call label consciousness. I am a, I am a, I am a, I am a man, I am a woman, I am black, I am white, I am transgender, I am gay, I am whatever. Now these are not who we are. They are experiences for our awareness. Yeah. The biggest perception deception of all is to manipulate the population, and it's ongoing right the way through what we call human life. It's to manipulate the population to self-identify as who we are with the experience, and thus lose touch of the true self, which is awareness. And awareness, what is awareness? It's a state of being aware, yes. Everyone's in a state of being aware. The question is how aware? And the system of what we call human society, human life, is specifically structured to squeeze the perception, therefore awareness of reality and self, to the smallest level that they can.
Yes.
And thus, most people will go through a whole human life, and except here and there maybe, won't even ask the big questions: who am I, where am I, what's this reality? Because the program is basically thinking for them, it's even feeling for them. And it takes on a certain view of reality, which has a minute sense of the possible. Now, this is so important. A lot of the time this is missed. One of the most compelling and effective ways of putting people in these self-identity prisons is to squeeze their sense of the possible. So if, for instance, you have quantum physics showing that reality is not solid, once you take that and put it in the mix, suddenly there is a great expansion of the sense of the possible, because something that's malleable and energetic and information based means that you can move it, you can change it, you can play with it, you can do so much with it. In fact, what you can do with it is limitless. Once you focus attention, solidify attention, if you like, squeeze attention to believe in everything is physical, and what you see is actually what you get when it's the last thing that you get, then suddenly the sense of the possible is squeezed. I mean, things like people changing shape, what's called shape shifting. If the world is solid, as it appears to be, that's impossible. Can't do that. And there's almost nothing you can do in a solid world. So although quantum physics, if you look at mainstream science, has shown that actually it's all based on information and energy, and it's all malleable, and our minds impact upon the reality we experience, you look at the other disciplines of science, and they kind of reluctantly acknowledge, yeah, okay, quantum physics exists, all right, yeah, they don't shout too loud. But then they crack on with their discipline as if the world is solid, and therefore they're looking at solid answers, like the medical profession is looking at the solid world in its mind to treat people through the scalpel and the drug. But
Dave,
if you treat them energetically, you don't need the scalpel and the drug. If you go to the level that the body's actually a projection of, this squeezing of the sense of the possible is so important, because then when people like you, me, and others start talking about things outside of the sense of the possible, that's when you get the reflex action. That's impossible. That's ridiculous. That you're talking rubbish. Opening our minds to the fact that anything is possible if you go deeply enough into this is crucial to breaking the programs which are there to tell us what's not possible. They're there to tell us about limitation, and you can't, and it's not possible.
so, I mean, and you're so good at laying all of this out. I think one of the other things that people out there need to recognize is we are within cycles. We're within cycles of not only nature, but cycles within our planetary system, our universe, etc. And it's very typical for us to get to the end of a world age, which people hear the age of Aquarius and that sort of thing. That alone, in my opinion, would lead to an enhanced perception deception, don't you think? I mean, isn't this even like, much worse than it would have, say, been 2,000 years ago?
Well, when you look around the cultures, the ancient cultures, there are many common themes. And one of them, wherever you look, and religion has picked this up too, although it's twisted and inverted it in many ways. And that theme is of some manipulative force seeking to engineer, manipulate, and direct human affairs. And what throws a lot of people out is, of course, different cultures give this force different names. And in one culture, it's called this, in one culture, it's called that. And if you don't realize that they're all names for the same thing,
Yeah.
when you break it down and you see the descriptions, the common themes are incredible. I mean, if you don't do that, then you think, oh, they believe in those gods, and they believe in those gods, and they believe in that god. Actually, they're talking about the same force in different words.
Yes.
And in the end, just as we are awareness in our pure state, so this force is a state of awareness. It too can take form, but it's a state of awareness. And I liken it in Phantom Self, and we'll do so at length in these talks, to, in effect, a computer virus. It's my contention, and not just mine now, but increasingly there are, even on the cutting edge of mainstream science, studies going on all around the world into the evidence that we live in the equivalent of a computer game. I would put it in these terms: we live in a quantum computer universe. And in a quantum computer, the information is held in the energetic fabric. And they're even now around the world running projects to build quantum computers that do that. Now, this is why, as people like Max Tegmark at MIT has pointed out, that the physics of our world are basically the same as the physics of a computer game.
Yeah.
The movement of the body and all the things that go on, the physics is basically the same between the two.
How long do you think this has been going on?
Well, I think it's been going on. Again, time is part of the fabric of the
That's true.
of the game. So therefore, there is no time as we perceive it, just a perception of time.
Right.
Someone said there is no time, only clocks.
It's like a loop.
Yeah, it's been going on a long time, thousands of years, a lot longer than that probably. And what's happened is that, and this is where we need to, and I should suggest the alternative media needs to open its mind beyond its own bubble. Because unless you get into these deep levels of reality, you cannot understand what's going on. Thus, you cannot see what can be done to change what's going on. If there's a movie playing, It's no good standing on the stage of the movie theater, holding a protest banner or hurling abuse at the screen, demanding that the screen change, the movie change, because by the time it hits the screen, it's already a done deal. You've got to go and change the reel. You've got to go and find out where it's being projected from. Then you can change the movie. And what we are experiencing in this world of the scene is akin to a computer screen or a movie screen. For instance, I'm looking at a movie screen now. There you are, on the screen. And yet, the only place that you exist in my computer, in the form that I'm looking at, is on the screen. Everywhere else, you are forms of information, just as I am looking at you. And what the computer does is it takes that information and decodes it into the reality that we see on the screen. So when people say, tell me about the internet. Oh, it's pictures and graphics, moving pictures on the computer screen. Yeah, but only on the screen. Everywhere else, it's in another form of information. You look at television, they'll say the same. It's moving pictures on a screen. Yes, but only on the screen. Everywhere else, it's information which is decoded into that form on the screen. What we are looking at, and this is another one of the great reasons that it's happening now, is that the shamans of the past, what we call the past, who went into these other levels of awareness and understood these concepts of where reality comes from, they then had to explain to the people of the day what they had accessed and seen using the analogies of the day. And the things they could, use to symbolize what they were trying to get across were very, very few in terms of getting anywhere close to what they were trying to get across. It had to be done in concepts and pure symbolism. And then you get, anthropologists going along and people like that, and they say, oh, these people were very primitive because they said this. No, they weren't talking literally, they were talking symbolically. Yeah. We, in this reality now, have the great gift that technology is mirroring the very reality that we're experiencing. And these analogies now are getting very, very close to how it really is, which is a great boon to anyone trying to get across what they're trying to say. So, for instance, it's not here, but it is in most places. If I had Wi-Fi in this room, I would look around and say, if I said to someone and they didn't know about computers, all around you now, there's an information field and fields of a whole collective reality, which you can access in South Africa or America or Australia, Britain, anywhere that you can log on to it. And people, if they didn't know about computers, they would say, you're crazy, that's mad, that's ridiculous, that's impossible. Now we have computers. And so it's easy to make the connection between this quantum computer universe where you've got all the information encoded in the fabric of the universe, the energetic fabric, and how it's an interactive universe. So we are taking information from it, and we are, by our acts, just as we are changing the internet by posting on it. So our state of being, our view, our perceptions, our emotional states are all impacting upon this quantum universe and subtly changing it depending on how many are doing what. And the idea of the perception deception to create the phantom self is to so focus attention to get people in states of fear, to get people in states of anxiety, to get people in low vibrational states of emotion and thought, whereby their energy in frequency terms starts to vibrate slower and slower until it goes into a state of comparative density. that squeezing of our frequency by the manipulation of our state of being, perceptions, emotions, and thoughts, means that we are only interacting with this quantum universe within that frequency band. And thus, our sense of the possible is dictated by that tiny frequency that we're actually interacting with. I mean, if people just looked, even according to mainstream science, at the amount of the known universe, from their point of view even, that we access and bring into a state of vision, of sight, it's hilarious. It is hilarious.
It is. And I've
so tiny.
said to people before that you must understand that the human being, the body itself, is this amazing mechanism that manifests everything. And we talk about manifestation all the time, but when you see particular symbols, particular language of light, when you see particular colors, the hidden hand that knows how to run this computer virus program, they're fully aware of all of the types of variables that they need to send us in order to continue to manifest and create that which they want us to create. As soon as we make the decision that we no longer want to play that game, like you said, and stay in the five senses, it would be game over.
Exactly. And this is the one of the major points I try to get across, is that we are manipulated and directed by a force that knows how we interact with reality.
Exactly.
And has spent its entire time structuring human society and human perception so that the target population does not know how we interact with reality.
Yeah.
And another common theme of all these cultures in relation to this force is that the force can only control humanity while it keeps humanity in a state of ignorance. And I have this this concept, this way of explaining this force in the sense of the one-eyed man is king. This force it's an inversion. It's an inversion of the natural order. Just like a computer virus is an inversion of the natural order of a computer. A computer virus gets its energy, its power, from the power of the computer system. And this is why another great common theme of the ancient cultures is that this force feeds off human low vibrational emotion based around the state of fear. In fact, I say in Phantom Self that from my research over the years, this virus, if you like, is fear. That's how fear came into the world. And because it itself is what we call fear, it can only feed off its own frequency, just like one radio station can only connect with its frequency and not with other stations on other frequencies. Thus, this is why, as these cultures have pointed out throughout history, this is why this force feeds off human fear. Why? Because fear is what it is. It's feeding off its own frequency. But what it has to do is get humans, by the manipulation of society, divide and rule and playing people off against each other, to produce that fear. So thus, to humans in a state of relative balance, a war is a terribly negative thing. To the inversion of balance, a war is a very positive thing because it's producing vast amounts of the very energy which feeds the beast. And so once you start to realize what the game is, then the world, which is inverted wherever you look, can be explained. Why it's inverted, why things are done this way and that way, why there's so much war, why there's so much suffering. It's because from the inversion point of view, that inverted, if you like, computer virus point of view, that's what it needs to survive. And so it's the one-eyed man, because it's inverted, it's an inversion of life. It's no accident in the synchronicity of life that the word evil is the reverse of the word live.
Right.
The reason those that worship this virus and its manifestations in form, what we call things like Satanism and what have you, the reason they're so obsessed with death and churchyards and sacrifice is because this virus is an inversion of life, and thus its focus is death. Its focus is not to build and create and to nurture, it is to destroy, it is to see things in a state of decay, because all of those things are within the frequency band that it feeds off. So then when people say, well, what about these elite bloodlines, these elite families that are behind all this? But why would they do this to the planet when they have to live on it? But when you see beyond the human level, if you like, into what's really going on, what we're seeing with environmental destruction and rainforest destruction and all the assaults on what you call the natural earth, it's because they're changing this reality systematically, a reality that suits humans into a reality that suits them. And that's why there is no contradiction between people apparently living on this earth and changing it in terms of humanity's ability to live on this earth as we always have. Because these people that we see in positions of power and influence, we see the human level, yeah, because that's what we're decoding. But behind that human level is this virus, which is dictating their behavior. And one of the manifestations of this inversion of life is the psychopath. You know, you look at politicians who bomb civilians, saying we're bombing them to protect them from violence, as they did in Libya and all these things. And you know what people say, because they're only seeing what they're meant to see, is no, they'd never do that. They'd never do that. They'd never create vaccines to destroy the immune system. They'd never start all these wars just because they're using them for more expansion. They wouldn't do that. And my answer is no. You wouldn't do that. You wouldn't do that. But would you be involved in serial killing? Well, no, but a psychopath would. And so with the great trait of psychopaths, and not all of them are serial killers. Most psychopaths are not serial killers, but they have major standout traits. And the key one is a lack of empathy, the inability to put themselves and in the position that their actions have put others, to put themselves in the way that person that you've made suffer this or that would be feeling. And that empathy among open-hearted humans is the fail-safe mechanism of human behavior. It stops people doing outrageous, horrendous things because of this empathy with the consequences of your actions. Take away that empathy, so you have no consequences for your actions, and that's what you're dealing with these expressions of this virus. And anything goes, because no matter what mayhem and horrors you cause, you have not only do you have no emotional consequence, you love it. You get a rush from it. Because part of the psychopath's character traits is the desire for power over others. And so we're not dealing with like for like. And, you know, if people are going to understand what's behind all this, they need to understand that they don't think like most people think, because they're in a completely inverted state of perception of everything.
And, you know, the other thing I was going to bring up to you and wanted to know what you thought is, so much of the alternative healing now, there's some very, very cool alternative therapies out there that use algorithmic code to literally collapse the wave of the viruses. In fact, so much research has been done. I've been working with another gentleman where literally even the expression of depression is a virus. A pimple on your face is a virus. And if you treat it that way, you can immediately eliminate it if you find the according, wave. So that same thing applies for us. If we step out of the perception deception, where we recognize that we ourselves carry a frequency that can cancel out all of this horrific, pain and destruction, et cetera, by raising our consciousness, we've got another really good opportunity to make some changes on this planet.
That is why I continually make the point that the alternative media, as well as everyone else, needs to look beyond the five senses.
Yes.
Because if you only perceive everything from there, then what solutions are there, except in the minds of people who are there? Even if you realize that governments and banking systems and corporations are not working in the best interests of people, it doesn't take long to work that one out. What do you do about it? And in a five sense level of how things are, then what's left? Stockpiling weapons, fighting the enemy. See, this
giving them exactly what they want,
and exactly what they want for this reason, of course, as we've just discussed. This virus feeds off low vibrational emotion. It feeds off fear. It feeds off hatred, anxiety, depression, all these things. So if we seek to bring about the elimination of control by this virus, by fighting, by hatred, by shooting in all directions, whatever, then we're basically feeding that which we're seeking to overcome. And this is why, again, if you only come basically from the five sense level of everything, you see the five sense level of the problem, and you only see five sense solutions, which are not solutions at all, of course. And from that point of view, virtually all your solutions will be means of feeding the very so-called enemy, as you perceive it, that you're challenging. And you go round and round and round. This is why, these bloodline families that are expressions of this virus couldn't care less about aggressive five sense level exposure, whatever you want to call it, by the alternative media, because they know that is feeding the beast. So once we start to realize that it's all coming from the energetic levels beyond human sight, and this is a projection of that state of being, that level of perception awareness collectively, then that's where you start to look at the answers. Now, where you're talking about everything is a virus, there's another way of saying it, which is everything is a state of balance or imbalance. And of course, what have we been talking about? This virus is a state of imbalance, so imbalanced, it's actually an inversion of life. Thus, it's trying to pull in, this is the word that I use in the book, and I'll go into this in some detail in the talks as well. It's trying to assimilate humanity energetically into its own inversion. This is why we have expressions of the virus that are not of the bloodline, that are subject to psychopathic behavior.
Yes.
It's the virus spreading. And so the way to overcome that is to go into a state as best we can of balance. Dis-ease is disease, is dis-ease. It's a state of energetic information imbalance. And you know, when the energy is going around the body, and I call the body a biological computer. I've been calling it that for decades. And
Amazing.
about 3 or 4 weeks ago, maybe a bit more, I saw a quote from a mainstream scientist in Britain who described the body as a biological computer. And he fell off the chair. And thus, we are interacting with this quantum universe according to the nature of how our biological computer is decoding information. So it's either decoding information that's much, or it's decoding an expanded state or spectrum of this quantum universe. And
David,
that person will have a completely different perception of everything.
At what point, though, in what you're saying, at what point does the virus get to a point where it's going to end up imploding?
Well, the thing is that the virus is a certain frequency. If you're in that frequency, then the virus is dictating your reality. If you're completely in its frequency, you're a psychopath. Once you start to expand your awareness, and what is expansion of awareness? It's an expansion of sense of self. From I am Ethel, I am Charlie, I work down the store, I work in the gas station, to I am infinite awareness having that experience. And the very state of re-identifying true self starts by that expansion of sense of self, starts to expand awareness, starts to move your point of attention where you're looking into this world. Instead of being like that, you're now starting to see that. Now you can see that that connects to that and that connects to that. You can't there, which is where most people are manipulated into being. Thus, then you start, as you expand, you're starting to access more and more of the information fields available, like more and more of the Wi-Fi fields, if you like, and you're getting greater insights, more awareness. And what you're doing also, that change of perception manifests itself in an expansion of frequency. So now you're expanding yourself away from the frequency of the virus, and suddenly that is influencing now you far, far less than it did before.
Yeah.
And this is the way out of it. And something else you're not doing once you leave the frequency of the virus, is you're not feeding it anymore. Lunch is no longer served, if you like, energetically.
Well, and on top of that, the energies that are coming in, the crystallization of the body, the enhanced DNA strands, all of these things are adding and helping us with this whole process, are they not?
Yeah, well, when this started for me consciously, because when I look back at my life, it started before I entered this world, never mind when I did. But when I consciously became aware of what was going on in 1990, I, at that time, was bumping into a lot of psychics in those first 2 years. And the common themes that I was being told through these psychics are, I'm getting this message for you and all that stuff that goes on, were very, very compelling. I mean, they were talking about the fact that I would go out on a world stage and reveal great secrets, which at that time I'm going, what? But the reason I mentioned that in relation to what you just said is that one other theme was that there was this is 1990 now, okay. There was a vibrational change coming that was going to wake up humanity from its coma, its slumber, that it was going to impact upon people who were more awake, in other words, who were their frequency was more fluid. And eventually it was going to impact on people who at that time was solid gold in the program, as I would call it today. And the other thing, of course, there was no sign of any of this at the time, was that all that's been this information change, I call it information change now, it was talking about an energy change, a vibration change at the time. It would bring to the surface all that had been hidden. And when you see what we knew then, compared with what we know now, 25, 26 years later, it's extraordinary the number of people that are now reevaluating life and their own self-identity and the world events is fantastic compared with then. And the kind of people, even people in the system who were part of it without realizing it and are now starting to see it. And at the time, years ago, you'd have thought, well, that person's never going to start to, get it and question anything. And it's happening. And I gave it the name Truth Vibrations. Well, I wrote my first book was called Truth Vibrations after I had my initial awakening. And these truth vibrations are impacting very demonstrably now on people and their perceptions and the way that they are. And here we go again, back to the same thing. Talk for long enough, all the dots connect in any conversation. The ability to see and expand the sense of the possible comes out of an expansion of awareness, because as you expand awareness, you are accessing more and more of this quantum computer universe field. And as you go and expand more and more, you go beyond this universal field into much, much more expanded levels of awareness. And as you do so, of course, your sense of the possible expands with you accessing more and more of the possible. And all the time, your connection to the virus is disconnecting and disconnecting and disconnecting. This is why, it's so plain to see that the whole conspiracy is based on the reverse of that. When I had my awakening in
before you say anything, hold on. Before you say anything, just regarding what you just said, is it possible for us to be 100% out of that perception deception in this reality?
Yes, because everything's possible.
Okay.
Is it easy to do that? No, nothing like. But what we can do is go on this process of expansion, what people call awakening, to the point where we disconnect from it as much as possible, and thus of its influence and its perceptions. And of course, when we are awakening, the ing is so important because it's an ongoing process. But I go back to what I said earlier. When I talk about as expansion of awareness, I used this analogy years ago. Our natural state of awareness is expanded awareness. It is that 100%. The natural state of a ball on a tank of water is at the top. So to keep the ball in an unnatural position, an unnatural state, you have to put your hand on it and you have to push it down to the bottom of the tank. But you can't let go. You have to hold it there. Because the moment you let go, zoom, natural state. So this is why society has been structured in this 24/7, 70 years and 10 totality of constantly suppressing people mentally, emotionally, and perceptionally. This system is the hand on the ball.
Yeah.
And if we start to disconnect from the system by realizing what it is, seeing its methods of suppression, all explained in Phantom Self, and the understanding of who we are compared with who we thought we were, then basically we don't even have to go around the hand. In frequency terms, we go through the hand because it's on a different frequency to us now, and we're back into our natural state. Because that humanity has to be blind so the one-eyed man could stay in control. Once this becomes the two-eyed, three-eyed, third-eyed human, then the one-eyed man loses control. And this is something that's so important. We do not have to find enlightenment. We have to remove the layers of programming and perception programming that keep us from that enlightenment, because that programming is the hand on the ball.
So talk a little bit about, how do you perceive technology as a program?
Well, this is a vast area. There's a chapter in Phantom Self that I call Transphantomism. And of course, that relates to transhumanism. But the reason I say transphantomism, because transhumanism is the program beyond the phantom. Up to this point, we have been held in five-sense perception by programming the, if you like, incarnate awareness into a myopic state of reality or sense of reality. So people, who are you? Okay, I'm my name, I'm my sex, I'm my race, I'm my religion, I'm my color, I am my job, I am my income bracket. No, they're your experiences, but that's phantom self, and phantom self goes myopic. Transhumanism, i.e. transphantomism, is to put technology in the body, not least nanotechnology, that takes that disconnection between incarnate awareness and infinite awareness to a whole new level. And when you're coming from this direction of transhumanism, then the statements of the transhumanist evangelists like Ray Kurzweil, Google, etc., make perfect sense. I've been writing in the books for years about what I called the agenda for the technological sub-reality. Kurzweil calls that the cloud. And he's now openly saying that by 2030, humans will be thinking from the cloud, because their minds, brains will be technologically connected to the cloud, i.e. the global internet, if you like, the global technological reality.
Sounds like a hive mind.
The hive mind, exactly that. And I talked earlier about assimilation. Well, this is the next stage of the assimilation. And I talk about this in Phantom Self because, you know, we hear all the time now that everything is going to be controlled by artificial intelligence, that cities, smart cities, anything with smart in front of it is part of this program. And if you look at the definition of smart technology, one of the official definitions is technology that can talk to other smart technology. All this smart technology is actually building a smart grid. Exactly. And that's another major part of what Kurzweil and others call the cloud. And so the idea is that the human mind, incarnate human mind, if you like, will be connected to the cloud, and the cloud will do its thinking. And it will all be controlled by artificial intelligence. What I've rarely heard is the question, and it's a key question: what is this artificial intelligence? My answer to that is, it's this virus. What we're seeing is the technological vehicle being created all around us in a sequence I can explain very quickly in a moment, as a vehicle for this virus to control everything. If you look at some scientists now, they're asking the question, could the internet become conscious? I think it's been conscious for a while already. And so if you look at the Johnny Depp film, Transcendence, for people who haven't seen it, he played a scientist who was trying to build a quantum computer and what have you, had a quantum computer. And he had a wife who was a scientist. And then he found he was dying. And so what they did was downloaded his his consciousness, if you like, his mind onto the internet, and the internet became self-aware. And of course, it was all symbolic of just in a story to create a self-aware internet. Now, people may have heard about this concept, which CIA directors are openly talking about, and other, technological giants, called the Internet of Things, in which everything is connected to the internet. Your fridge is connected to the internet through smart meters and smart this and smart that. And the idea in Transcendence was that this was the state of the world then. Everything was connected to the internet, including humans who were connected to the internet by sending out on the wind. I would say they're doing it through chemtrails, nanotechnology, which breathed in, and then they connected them to the internet. So this Johnny Depp, now self-aware internet, was now dictating everything, dictating to all the technology that was connected to it, and now it was dictating to the behavior and perceptions of humans that were connected to it. And this is the process of assimilation. Mm-hmm. And so what's happened, and it's this process I call the totalitarian tiptoe. First, get people addicted to technology. Tick, achieved largely for vast numbers of people. Get them addicted to technology that they hold in their hand, right? Oh, sorry. Can't take their faces off it. Can't take their eyes off it.
Oh, I know. They're always looking down. They're not looking up,
And then you go to the next stage in the tiptoe, and you go to what they call wearables. You go to smart watches. You go to Google Glass. You go to things on your ear.
That secret bracelet?
Yeah, exactly. All that stuff. Yeah. And then the next stage is to go to what they call implantables. I mean, my book's 20 odd years ago. We're talking about the microchip population coming, and now they're talking openly about implantables. And I read an article in Forbes magazine a few months ago, last year sometime, that was predicting that within 3 or 4 years, implantables would be as normal as wearables. And this is where it's going. And once the implantables are there, beyond even the nanotechnology, then you're starting this process of connecting to the cloud, as Kurzweil calls it, the technological sub-reality. And he's saying that eventually the process will start, and then less and less of the human will be in the thought process until humans are thinking completely from the cloud. And of course, what they're selling this as is you'll be superhuman. Oh yeah, I want to be super. No, it's not. Idea is not to make you superhuman. It's to make you subhuman. That's the whole point. So now, what this is transhumanism is about: 5 sense self, phantom self, disconnected from infinite self, is replaced by incarnate self, technological connection, cloud, disconnecting you from infinite self more powerfully than ever before. But so what we're looking at, and I was going to go on to say this earlier, the reason synchronistically that I'm going on this open-ended world speaking tour this year, next year, and for as long as people want to hear me, is because I said years ago, 2016, 2017, 2018 are going to be absolutely crucial years in this to decide which way this goes. And here we have this extraordinarily profound moment that we're now living through, where on one side we have this truth vibration expansion of awareness and people starting to question things they never questioned before. On the other side, you've got this mad rush to try to lock that down and stop that happening by attaching people technologically to instead of infinite awareness, a technological artificial intelligence that will be dictating every thought and every emotion.
And it anchors them. It anchors them in this dimension, in this reality, in this lower vibration. Because exactly. I was going to ask you, I mean, don't you think sometimes, I think the $64 million question is, does artificial intelligence then ultimately take on its own consciousness? And can it not grow in a higher state of consciousness?
Well, for me, everything is the same infinite awareness,
Okay.
but not everything is infinitely aware. George W. Bush, I rest my case. We're all the same, whether you're George W. Bush or this inverted virus, as I would call it, you are still infinite awareness having an experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything can return to a state of balance from even extreme levels of imbalance.
Thank you.
And the more you see that we awaken ourselves, and the closer that we as a collective humanity get to the infinite awareness that we are, the more we will be impacting upon the virus in the same way that it's been impacting on us while keeping us in a state of ignorance. And the more that we expand our awareness, then we move beyond the frequencies where even nanotechnology can impact upon us. It's all about frequency, all of it. And you know, the virus in all its forms and expressions wants to suppress our frequency, so we stay in its frequency of fear and all that goes with it, and prevent us from entering the realms beyond its ability to impact upon us. That is the true self, and this is why we have this suppression quite blatantly in the schools, in the media, everywhere, of any real discussion about the nature of reality itself and the nature of life itself. You see, when I started my awakening 26 years ago, and I started to realize there were other explanations for everything, my first thought was, why isn't this taught in the schools? Why don't I see this in the papers? And of course, when you ask that question, the answer is because it's suppressed, and then you start moving and asking questions, well, why is it suppressed? And then the whole panorama of the global conspiracy opens up to you. And this is not suppressed for a bit of a laugh. It's fundamental to keeping us in a state of blindness so the one-eyed man is king. We have to believe only in five-sense reality. We have to believe that what we see is only what we get and what we are. For this whole conspiracy to prosper and be effective. And so they're terrified of this information. You know, they're more terrified of what we're talking about here in terms of reality and the nature of the true self than ever they are with who really was behind 9/11 and who engineered this war or that war. I'm not knocking that information. I've covered all that myself and continue to do so. It's important to know. But comparatively, this information about the nature of reality and the true nature of self, this is the information they're really terrified about, far more than the other.
Well, they're terrified of the human angelic spirit taking back their mastery, period. I mean, once we all wake up to the fact of who we really are. One last question for you, because I know you are on a time crunch here. How would you respond to a lot of the head leaders, a lot of, you know, like Obama, Putin, Netanyahu? What would you say to the comment that many of them are double agents, meaning they're playing both sides of the fence? Obama has not done certain things that Bush would have done, which appears to the community of the light to be something that is positive, that has actually assisted the movement of the light and progress forward. Just wondering what you think about that.
Well, if we start with Netanyahu, I think
Netanyahu.
People like Netanyahu are overwhelmed and almost completely infested by this virus, because their whole demeanor, their whole lack of empathy is based on psychopathic characteristics, and this is why you find that world leaders are invariably at some level of psychopathic behavior. I think that Obama is a massive fraud. I wrote an article just before he was elected for the first time, and it was called Barack Obama, the Naked Emperor, pointing out that all that he was saying was not going to be what he would do, and it would be virtually business as usual. I remember saying this just before he was elected when I was speaking in LA, and the audience went very quiet at the time. And I met a talk show host afterwards who said, "I'll bet you what you like that Obama will be what he says he'll be." And I remember saying to him, I don't want to take your money, because is he president? Yeah. Well, then he's acceptable to the cabal, because the cabal control the presidency. I mean, they're looking now to try and get Hillary Clinton in, but I mean, any of those running will be to some level acceptable. And when I look at Obama, there's so much that he could have done. There's so much that he could have said. Has he been the same as Bush in every last detail? No. Has the outcome been the same, however? Pretty much. And he could have got together and started to speak publicly, and then there was no need to be what has happened in Syria. The agitation in Syria was initially orchestrated by the ambassador to Syria, the American ambassador to Syria, a guy called Ford, who has a notorious record for doing that in other places, creating apparent people's revolutions that were really agitation to start an external-led regime change. And he argued for the bombing of Libya and what it's become now. I think, however, that, of course, people do in detail do different things. And you can say, well, at least he did that. But if you look in overall theme, the theme has been the same. In terms of Putin, he's a classic of what I'm just been talking about. Because obviously, you look at his history, he has quite a dark background. And, even on that level, because of the way the system works, you have to have, certain psychopathic, no empathy characteristics to get to the top of the greasy pole in politics in almost any country, because that's the way the system works. Who's willing to trample over others and lie more than others to get to the top of the greasy pole? However, what Putin has been doing, not, I would suggest for, working for the light in conscious terms, but because of seeing the lie of the land and where it's leading, I think that he has realized, and it doesn't take a genius to see it really, that Russia is the big target, and they want to pull China into that target as well. I've been saying for years that the agenda is, whether they pull it off is something else, the agenda is a third world war with the West against Russia and China. And it's just extraordinary that the CIA should announce just a few weeks ago their list of the biggest threats to the world. At the top was Russia and second was China. It was, hello. So what Putin has done, because I think what Putin has above Obama and above, oh my goodness me, above David Cameron, the Prime Minister of Britain, and Hollande in France, is that he, in terms of intelligence, he plays them like a violin. He is far more intelligent on a human level than ever they are, and thus he's been moving the pieces around and having them in checkmate all over the place. He's obviously realized that all this thing in Ukraine and this fake coup, where a man called Poroshenko, after this people's revolution that was all manipulated, became the president, and WikiLeaks documents since revealed that Poroshenko was United States asset agent or one of them in Ukraine before any of this happened, and he just turns up as president. I mean, hello.
Yeah.
He realized that all that Putin, that all that Ukraine stuff is to target Russia. And then he had a situation in Syria where Assad, who was supported by Russia, was being allowed to be removed by the most horrific people who were beheading people. I mean, they've beheaded so many people. They ought to join the royal family of Saudi Arabia,
Wow.
which we continue to arm, of course. And the idea was that ISIS would not be challenged. They'd drop bombs. They'd make sure they weren't effective on the claim that they were fighting them. And ISIS was expanding. And at that point, not that long ago, Assad and the Syrian army were not far from being overrun.
Yes.
So Putin could see this on a human level, and in he went. I mean, that was the big movement on the board, that was. And of course, what Putin has done, and this comes back to Obama in many ways, he set out genuinely to push this ISIS mob back. And he did so. And he's done so in a very, very short time compared with how long the Western countries, led by the United States, have been claiming that they were fighting ISIS in the Middle East.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it was like, you've not been trying, have you? No, they haven't been trying.
And he blew that right out the door. Plus, he did have exquisite timing.
It was brilliant, yes.
Strategically, he was exquisite in the way he handled it.
And it was rather excruciating just a day or so ago to see the State Department spokesman being asked by the White House press corps, or the State Department press corps, for a comment on ISIS being driven out of this ancient city of Palmyra by Russian air power and the Syrian government army. And he was dancing all over the place, trying not to say he welcomes it, because they don't welcome it. They wanted ISIS to, and those connected to ISIS, called moderate rebels, to overwhelm and to regime change on their behalf. Putin has thrown a massive spanner in that works, and therefore he has affected, at least for now, a chain of events that was supposed to follow that. So in that way, on the 5 cents level alone, he has, at the very least, slowed down where this agenda was planning to go. If Clinton comes in, Hillary Clinton, then you'll see it really start to kick off. Because if ever there is a psychopath in a human body, and there are many examples, she's far from alone, but certainly one of them is Hillary Clinton.
So do you think that Putin has overcome the virus? You know?
Well, no, because I mean he rules in Russia with a rod of iron, and I mean you've got a man who was president and then ran out of presidential terms that you could have successively, and so someone else came in, and Putin became the prime minister, and as prime minister he was actually the president, and then he was able to come back as president and have some more terms. And to be able to do that means you really are running the place as a fiefdom. And you know he has a background which is very unpleasant.
Yeah.
But the virus is not the virus or not the virus. It's the scale that it affects you. And you know there's also a big human trait called self-preservation.
Yeah.
And when you were looking, if you were looking from Moscow at what was unfolding in Ukraine and what was unfolding in Syria, and they would well know that the idea was to pull them into a war, then self-preservation makes you act in ways that you wouldn't normally. And you know, on a human level, on a 5 cents level, I'm glad that the Russians did act as they did, because it slowed the whole thing down, particularly the Middle Eastern agenda.
I totally agree with that. Well, so before we let you go, please describe to everyone what is the really unique part of this tour that you're going to be taking across the world, as far as what do you feel they're going to walk away with that they've never done before?
Well, I talk from 10 in the morning till 10 at night, not all the time. There are some breaks. Um, uh,
I
and,
hope so for your case.
and there are something like 2,000 illustrations. The
Wow.
reason it's so long is because I connect dots across a vast spectrum of subjects that appear on the surface to be unconnected, but by the end of the talk, people will see that they're completely connected. The first section talks about the program and why people think as they do, and why people have the perceptions that they do, how it's done. It's very simple to explain. And when you bring in, people's everyday experience, and you see actually it's a program. It's a program. You see it's that, but it's a program. And then I go through the 5 sense level of the conspiracy, what world events really mean, and what they're designed to bring about, and the techniques that manipulate perception on the basis of one world event, so that people will agree to change in society that they wouldn't have agreed to without the manufactured events, what I call problem, reaction, solution. You mentioned it earlier. And then the second section is all about the nature of reality, on all levels, finishing off that section with how this reality is actually a quantum computer equivalent of a quantum computer game. And then after all that's gone, section 3 is how this computer game is controlled to create the world that we see and the world that this virus wants us to go on into, the nature of the virus, the background, the historical mentions in various names of what I call the virus, and then pulling in human behavior and world events from the point of view of the virus, and whoa, suddenly the world looks very different, and things that appear to be happening because of that, people can now see they're happening because of this. And then I move on into, I mentioned, the connection of pedophilia. Why is there so many pedophiles in the so-called upper echelons of society? There's a reason for that, and it's to do with the virus. What is Satanism? Well, what's its connection to religion? What's religion's connection to the virus? And then I go into this whole transphantomism, transhumanist area to explain what it's all about, and this creating of a technological global vehicle for this virus to control everything. It's you think of the Matrix movies and Machine City. Well, Machine City, what were the machines in the Matrix controlled by? Artificial intelligence through technological means. It's just putting it in your face, really. And then in section 4, that's about what we can do about it. And it's not stockpiling weapons. It's not hating the enemy. It's doing what is necessary to remove the influence of the virus over human society, so human society transforms as a result. The ball smacks back to the top of the tank, and how we break out of influence of the virus ourselves, so that we interact with the world from the perspective of expanded awareness, and not from the perspective of the virus, which is limitation, limited possibility, everything's apart from everything else. I have to fight because for me to win, someone's got to lose. All these concepts are all from the virus. And I find it interesting that the Native Americans have this concept of the 2 wolves. One wolf, and the two wolves are inside everybody. The concept of that one wolf is about hatred, fear, depression, and power over all these things, and the other wolf is about love, empathy, compassion, and all these things. And the Native American story asks the question, which wolf wins?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, what we're looking at there is our character trait expressions of awareness in its true state of balance. And there we're looking at expressions of the virus, which is a distortion of balance. And I would say this, I'd say this in Phantom Self, I think there's a very good chance that if you peel back the symbolism and the way the story's been distorted through the ages, that this whole concept of original sin, being born with original sin, is actually being born with this virus, which is passed on through the generations genetically. Because for me, running through the information programs of the body is this virus, which is impacting upon us emotionally and mentally. But even though that's happening, we don't have to be impacted and influenced by it if we withdraw from the frequency, and therefore its impact upon us. So therefore, there might be this original sin, as it's called in Christianity, this inheritance of the virus. But that may be so. But there are people in the world, and there are endless examples of them, who show no traits of the virus whatsoever, even though they might be running through the programs of their body. So consciousness, in its true sense, is all powerful. And the one-eyed man knows that. And that's why it works so hard to keep us blind.
Absolutely. And, we're truly talking about which one are you going to give your power over to, the reptilian mind or the human spirit? And recognize that we are all in this together, and that it is time to take action now. And I know you've been talking about that a great deal, that between now and 2018, I think is why 2018?
Well, 2018, you could knock it on 2019, 2020. I'm just picking those 3 years where I think a lot will be decided, because what we're having, you see, is this awakening, yes, but we're also having this mad scramble to bring in transhumanism as fast as possible. This is why they're talking in really small timescales in terms of being connected to the cloud by 2030 and all that. Interestingly, though, you mentioned there the reptilian thing, and many people have said, many people comparatively, have said that, the reptilian race exists, but they're not all trying to harm humanity. My feeling is that this assimilation of the virus is not just being attempted on humans. I think, and indeed there are cultures that talk about this in their own way. But there are other races that aren't human, other realities that have been assimilated by this virus. And I think that the reason that you see this reptilian thing come in, and why it's so connected to the virus and it's so connected to what's happening, is because that part of the reptilian expression of all that is has been that is part of this manipulation. Has been assimilated by this virus, and it's extraordinary. And what the so-called greys are all part of it as well. That assimilation, and it's amazing when you look at the character traits of these reptilian entities and grey entities that so many people say they've interacted with and have had been abducted by. And you look at what the ancient culture descriptions of their behavior have been, and it's absolutely the virus in form: psychopathic behavior, no empathy, no sense of compassion, none of it, because it's an expression of the virus. And when you have, therefore, reptilian human genetic interaction and what's become known as interbreeding with the gods, therefore anything that interbreeds with something infected by the virus is infected by the virus. And you look at the story of the Garden of Eden and Adam and Eve, which is told in a different way in various ways around the world, not just in the Bible. And at the center of this whole thing, this whole scene, and the fall of man, as it was called, was the serpent. And, for me, the fall of man, fall of humanity, was the virus causing humanity to fall down the frequencies into ignorance. And we now have the opportunity to climb back up the frequencies into enlightenment and remember who we are. Because as you fall down into ignorance and you fall down the frequencies, you can lose the memories held in higher frequencies. So when you start to climb the frequencies, because you're letting the programs go, suddenly you remember who you really are, because you're accessing that level that holds that information, and leaving that level that through frequency of suppression has forgotten what it really is and who we really are. And that's what the conspiracy is all about, making us asleep.
That's
it's amazing, isn't it? We use these words all the time. Humanity is asleep. Humanity must awaken. It's exactly in frequency terms what has happened and what needs to happen.
There's actually a gentleman that I met that really believes that the reptilians are they're kind of like an offshoot of the original dragons, and that they became so enraged because way back their DNA was ripped off, and they vowed that they would attack those that stole their DNA, because it was like the horrible thing to do. And now we're contending with something potentially like that, where they've become so enraged with hate that they're engulfed with the virus and the way in which they have no empathy in their hearts. So
yeah,
another idea. I thought it was very interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, anything is possible, but when you become consumed by this virus, you become inverted in your perceptions. And if you come from a state of life, a state of love, state of balance, then the inversion of that is going to be the opposite of that, and therefore you're going to manifest those traits. And that's why we have the world that we do, because the world is run by those traits. That's why you have people hungry in a world of plenty. That's why you have people homeless with endless empty homes. It's why you have now very close to 1% of the population owning the wealth, half the wealth of the world. This is the virus assimilating everything, and its biggest gift in doing that is human ignorance, that's what it's doing, or even in its own existence. And that's why it's been important for people who have come across this information to put it out there so people can make of it what they will, knowing that they were going to go through ridicule and dismissal and all the rest of it. But going through those things is far preferable to the information not circulating at all. I get great encouragement now from the fact that I see people able to encompass the kind of, from the 5 sense reality, far out things that we're talking about here now. They're starting to be able to encompass them as into their sense of the possible, and that shows that we are making progress. And they don't suppress information, like I said earlier, for fun. They do it because it's essential. We must, those who have access to other explanations of the world, it's a duty. To have access to that information is a gift.
Yeah.
It's a privilege. And thus, there are responsibilities that come with the gift and the privilege. And that is, we don't sit on it, because, there's this line that I hear often: knowledge is power. No, it's not. It's not. The use of knowledge is power. Knowledge that is unused might as well be no knowledge at all, because it's a cul-de-sac. it goes no further. Knowledge not used does not impact upon your life unless you use that knowledge to change your life and what you do. Knowledge is not power unless you share it with other people so they can have the power of knowledge to use. So, you know, people who go on the internet and chat rooms and social media and just, you know, chat among themselves, oh, I know better than you and I know better than this, and they're not using the information. They're, you know, I mean, social media can be used to circulate the information, but you know, so much of the alternative media and those that that follow the alternative media, they do tend to look in on themselves. So the alternative media becomes its own version of a soap opera. Everyone's looking in and arguing with each other and stuff. And we need to turn and look out, because that's what we're here to do, to share information with people that don't have it, not to argue and kick and cuss with each other over the fine detail of things that in the end don't really matter.
I say all the time, we are the trailblazers here. The fact that we are enlightened and that we are aware, there is a responsibility, because we're a very small portion of this population, and it is up to us to lead the trail, to open some doors and pathways for the rest so that they can get where we've got, which took us, some of us, decades to get here. You know, I mean, this is not all about just sitting in your room meditating. We are really truly at a crossroads where we all need to take action in whatever we're feeling, you know, passionate to bring a level of awareness to this planet, because that brings a level of increased vibration, and that increases our connectivity within our consciousness.
Absolutely. And we're being supported now in that by this
very much so
vibration, energetic change that's going on, in fact, impacting upon more and more people. The thing that I hear too from people within what might be called the New Age arena, or it used to be called that, is that this information is negative. Exposing what's happening in the world is negative. And what I would say to those people is two things, because what they say is, oh, you know, it frightens people. Well, two things. One, ignorance is negative. Information is never negative. It's just information. It's just that you know more now than you did 30 seconds ago, or whenever the information came to you.
Right.
It's ignorance that's negative. So why should the exposure of what's really going on in the world be negative? And the other side of it is that the very people that are saying you must let go of fear, you must let go of fear, are saying, oh, you're frightening people with this information. What you mean is you're frightening them.
You can't have it both ways.
What happened to letting go of fear? The fear is the virus. If we don't march through fear, then we're going to go absolutely nowhere. And it's important for people to realize that part of the process, it's easier now, my goodness me, never been more, but part of the process of communicating information to people that are still in the five sense reality mode is that you're going to get attacked and you're going to get ridiculed and you're going to get dismissed. Well, no one said it was going to be easy. And what I find with a lot of people in New Age mode, if you like, who are saying, "Oh, it's negative and you mustn't do this," is actually what's happening is spirituality, as it's called, is being used not as a means of expressing that spirituality, but a means of escape from the world they don't want to face. And true spirituality is to walk where you don't want to walk, but because you know it needs to be done for the greater good. It's not to run around trying to find excuses not to walk there, to persuade yourself that not walking there is fine, even though deep down you know that's where you should go.
You know
So
what, David?
it's not easy, but it's necessary.
No, and the thing is that we all strive to become truly enlightened, which really gets down to how neutral can we be? How much from a state of observation can we come from in order to see the entire spectrum of the amazing emotional body that the human spirit has, and be able to look at all of the different emotions without getting triggered from within, and be able to observe and be able to see it from a perspective where, I mean, if you get really way too happy, it is already quantum physics proven you're going to swing all the way to the other side. It's just the way it happens. That's the way it happens. It's like a pendulum that finally it finds its central point. And it's our responsibility, if we see things that are infringing on people's freedom, if it's infringing on the health, wealth, and happiness of not only the people, but every living being, then we know we need to take action and stay in that point of neutrality where we want to remain integrous. And that means integrous to our own individuality, integrous to the fact that, hey, I see what David is saying is truth, and it might feel a little scary to me. Hey, maybe I need to go within and say, am I trying to avoid this? It's not a matter of how much focus you're going to put on something. It's just acknowledging it and saying, hey, that does exist. Now, what do I do with that? Because we can't continue to ignore it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've reached the point where there's a lot of people on the other side of the street now who are pointing across the road at what's going on. And they're at the point where, see, I told you to do that next, didn't I? Didn't I tell you? They're onlookers. They're onlookers, and they can see it on that level. What we need to do is cross the street and start getting involved in what's necessary to change the picture, not just observe it it's almost like a hobby rather than a passion and a mission to do what you can to change it.
Well, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying just to observe from that.
No. I was actually just going there.
Okay, good.
I was going to say this, but in the use of the word that you're using, in the terms that you're using the word observation, that's a key point, because I've spent 25, 26 years looking at some really appalling information and talking to people who've had the most extraordinarily horrific experiences. And while you can feel empathy for that and for empathy for them, if you get pulled into the emotion of it, then you're less effective in doing something about it, because you're getting pulled into low vibrational emotion again of hatred, of fury against the beast. What I do is I do observe what's going on, and I not a cold neutral, but I try to hold an emotional neutral, so that I'm clear thinking enough to think, well, what's the most effective way of me dealing with this?
Exactly.
And I can honestly say that when I look at the people who are behind this, I look at the awareness or lack of it that's behind this. I look at some of the characters like Henry Kissinger, and I look at Hillary Clinton, and Father Bush, and all these people, Cheney, and Blair in this country, all these people, and people, even like Erdogan in Turkey, this tyrant of a man called a democratic leader. And I see what they do, but I feel no hatred for them. And funnily enough, I feel no animosity towards them. I just want to do everything I can to change it, so that their impact, their control, and their influence is no more. Because if I start getting pulled into hating these people, and into levels of fury and antagonism towards them, from an emotional level, what am I doing? I'm feeding the virus. I'm attaching myself to the virus. And, you know, I this line in one of my books years ago, what you fight, you become.
Yes.
There's so much evidence that that's the case. What you fight, you become. That's why so many so-called revolutions end up the same as before, except with different people in charge. So your point about observing it and staying neutral as best you can is very, very important, because otherwise you're going to get pulled into what you're challenging again. And it's about turning what we would call anger into effective action,
Yes.
rather than staying with the anger and just constantly throwing out the anger and fury at your target. That may make you feel better in the moment, but it ain't going to change much. In fact, you're adding to that you want to change. It's very important we do that, to stay neutral and don't get pulled into not anger. I mean, you feel anger when you see it. I feel anger when I see what's done to people in Gaza, but you then channel that into, okay, calmly, how can I best make a difference and make a contribution to changing this? That's the way we'll get out of this, because red mist doesn't usually make good decisions.
Yeah, and the anger too, I think, is feeling stifled, having that feeling, and probably a belief system that you can't do anything about it. You know, we've been conditioned to believe that we can't do anything about it, that what we do isn't going to matter. I mean, that's like a subversive program running all the time. And we are here to change that, you know.
I think it's interesting, you know, if you look at anger, anger and frustration are almost different expressions of the same state of being.
Yeah.
You get angry, you get frustrated because you can't do anything. You feel you can't do anything about what you're angry about, and that makes you more angry, and you get more frustrated. It's almost like a pendulum going, like anger, frustration, one feeding off the other, and to break that cycle, we just need to calmly say, well, okay, how can I most effectively contribute to this, and do it calmly, and then you break that cycle. You not only become less angry and more focused on, okay, how do I make a difference? Because you've let the anger become something else, your frustration goes. And I'm not sitting here cross-legged on a mountain. You probably noticed, cross-legged on a mountain. Like the Buddha. You know, I've been through these decades. I've been angry at what I've seen. I've been deeply, deeply frustrated at not being able to make more of a difference at that time, in that moment. And I've been through all these emotions, and gradually you start to realize through experience and learning from experience that there's a better way of doing it, and it's better for you, it's better for your equilibrium, it's better for your health, and it's certainly more effective in terms of what you do. So I've reached a point now where I've never been more passionate about what I do. I've never been more determined to do everything I can to make a difference, but at the same time, I've never been more laid back and chilled about what I do. Because, years ago, I would have said all the first bit, but behind it, I would have had this fury, this anger, this frustration at what was happening in the world and why things weren't changing quicker. And I've reached a space now where I'm doing things more effectively, but they're having a much less impact on my emotions and dragging me into these states of anger and frustration. So I'm not saying, I'm cross-legged on a mountain. I'm saying from my experience, this is the most effective way to interact with what we're trying to do.
Yeah. And definitely For all of the people listening, I have such an awesome audience and they're extremely enlightened people. I receive emails from all over the world, and the one thing that we all really get is that we are an example. We are totally on the hot seat right now to exemplify that which we want to bring to this planet. We cannot expect anyone to do it for us. We do have assistance. We have a massive amount of assistance now. But we ourselves are really being called to be the leaders, to take action, to show our passion, and to do whatever we can to raise awareness wherever we go. Every time I go to a store, David, I'll drop a bomb. Every single time. And I'll do it in a very nice and loving way. Like, oh, did you see the chemtrail in the sky? Oh, do you eat organics? You know, just anything that gets them to go, well, why do you ask me that? Just to get their mind out of the program. You know, it's something that simple that's actually assisting.
See, what I mentioned earlier about people looking for excuses to persuade themselves they don't have to go where they don't want to go. And one of the great lines you hear, you will have heard it all the time over the years, is, yeah, but what can I do? What can I do? And that is a question in theory, but actually it's a statement saying, if I can convince myself there's nothing I can do, there's nothing I have to do. And of course, there are phone-in programs. I say this to people, there's phone-in programs going on 24/7 all over the world. Get on one of them for a start. Yeah, the DJ guy might just, oh, shut up, get off. People have heard it. You can't unhear something. So it's not, there's nothing that we can do. The question is, do you want to make a difference enough to do it? That's the question.
Oh, that's a good point.
And that's the question that we need to answer with an almighty, profound yes, if we are going to make a difference, because we're back to knowledge is not power. The use of knowledge is power. And people just have to get used to the fact that, when you speak the words of sanity in a world that's insane and systematically so, don't expect that what's going to come back is agreement with you and pats on the back and a Christmas card or whatever. That's not going to happen. Mm. But what I would say is, people stop me in the street now. They write to me. They communicate me in various ways. Who 10, even 5, certainly 20 years ago, would have and were laughing at me and ridiculing me. In Britain, I was the national nutter. I was the national crazy man. And now, a few weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, we had the Prime Minister of Britain feeling it necessary to say that the European Union was not a great, a giant David Icke style conspiracy.
I just can't get over that. That's awesome.
So the thing is, when I met those psychics, and especially the first one, Betty Shine, in 1990, and she gave me a series of messages over 2 visits, and one of them sums it up. It said, the spiritual road is tough, or the spiritual way is tough, and no one makes it easy. And then you say, well, why should it be? Why? Because you are saying things and doing things that are at odds with everything that's going on around you. Yes. If we were in a world in which what people call spirituality was the norm, it would be easy.
Yeah. I tell people all the time, we're walking in an enemy camp.
But because we are in the world that we are,
yeah.
When you speak the truth to lies, when you speak the truth to deceit, when you speak the truth to that which has brought the mendacity, then it's going to react against you. But truth is a frequency. and it's more powerful than lies, which are what? An inversion of truth.
Right.
What do politicians who are of the virus do? They lie constantly because they are an inversion of truth, because they're an expression of the inversion that is the virus. It kind of all comes together in the end and makes sense of the world. So, you know, I can tell you a quarter of a century on, and you could say the same, and so many others can. I've personally been through historic levels of ridicule, historic levels of dismissal. I still get it from the mainstream media. I get it from great chunks of the alternative media, because I go further than they do in terms of what's going on. And I'm sitting here now. I've never been happier. I've never been more at peace. I've never been more determined to do what I'm doing. And so, even though you are going to get resistance, it's almost a confirmation that you're right. When you live in a madhouse and you get resistance from a madhouse, you should take that as a compliment. If the madhouse says, "Yeah, you're talking sense," well, I'll just reevaluate what you've just said. You know,
it's completely the opposite. It's completely the opposite of what we've been taught.
Yeah. So therefore,
you're going to get that backlash.
Of course. The thing is, though, and this is what I found in my own personal experience, the more you speak it, the more the resistance to it gets diluted, because it's quite simple. If what you say has no validity, then you're not going to get anywhere with it. You will for a while, but it will be sussed in the end. Mm-hmm. If what you say has validity, you know, if you say what you say has no validity, you might get away with it in the short term, because people will believe it because they just believe it because they haven't checked it out. But then people check it out and suddenly they see it has no validity, and so you go nowhere with it. When what you say has validity, immediately it is usually dismissed and ridiculed and cast aside. But when it's checked out, people see actually it does have validity. And one way that people are checking it out without actually doing anything is just observing world events in the light of what they've heard in terms of this information. And then suddenly people see it does have validity. And now people who are ridiculing you are saying, "Hey, you know, where do I get a book? When are you speaking here?" And the thing is, so many people are coming to my work now because what was in previous books has turned out to be what happened in the world. I'm personally not happy with that. The idea of putting the information out was to stop it, the agenda becoming reality. But anyway, they've seen that what was in the books saying this is what the agenda is going to be is what's happening in the world now. And now they're coming and saying, "Well, hold on a minute, this is starting to make sense." The only reason that they can say that now is because it was said years and years ago amid an absolute cacophony of ridicule, dismissal, and laughing. Yeah. If that information had not been spoken then amid that, if it had not been written then amid that, despite it, it wouldn't be here now for people to say, "Hold on a minute, that bloke wrote this 10 years ago and it's happening." It would not have been there. And I could have written it today. And they say, "Yeah, but you say you knew it was coming." Well, why don't you say so at the time? "Oh, well, I was frightened of what the reaction would be." You see, this is where, you know, people need to speak their truth.
Yes. Yeah.
Speak their truth. It's their truth. It doesn't matter what other people think of you. It matters whether you speak your truth or not, and not go through mental gymnastics of what do I say or what do I don't say, what do I leave out, because I'm thinking, what will people think of me? If people cannot have the respect for you to respect your right to have your view, even though they might not agree with it, then what are you doing worrying about what they think? I don't care if they're your parents. I don't care if they're your mates. I don't care if they're the people at work. I don't care if they're your children. If they cannot respect your right to have your view, then what are you worried about what they think of you for? It's what you think of you.
Yeah.
And how many people don't say things, don't do things because they fear what other people think of them. And then down the road, they have this negative thought about themselves.
Right.
Because of, I wish I'd have done that when I could have done it.
Yes.
The way not to have those moments is, first of all, to respect your own right to your own truth and your own right to speak that truth. And if people keep doing that, then this process of, that's a load of rubbish, mad. Well, hold on a minute. You know that mad bloke, he said this was going to happen, and it's happening. Well, what else is he saying? But it's only possible if it's said amid the ridicule and amid the resistance. It's so important. We must speak our truth. That is the way this changes, because the suppression of that truth is how we got here.
And the fact that this is part of growing up. This is part of becoming masters, is taking back our own truth. I mean, if, for example, I mean, if you're going to say something, as long as you say it with conviction and with kindness, okay, and you speak your truth, and you come to some sort of effect where I would like to be treated as someone else would want to, treat me, okay. But that is something that's really new in the business world. That's something that we're not really taught that. We're taught to stuff. We're taught to suppress. We're taught to, ooh, I better not say that because I might get my job. I might lose my job. We're learning. This is all part of the learning growth process, isn't it, David?
See, this is where the big fork in the road stands.
Yeah, it is.
Speak your truth, or don't, because you fear the consequences of speaking your truth. If you fear the consequences of speaking your truth to the point where you won't speak it, then you are walking down the same road that you've been walking all your life, and this world collectively continues to walk down the road that we've been walking all our lives. The fork in the road says there is an alternative, and that's to speak your truth and to take the consequences of that. But we talk about consequences. I have this line I use in one or two of the books. Life often gives you your greatest gifts, brilliantly disguised as your worst nightmare.
So true.
And because
True.
if you want to change the way your life is, and collectively you want to change the reality we're living, then the key thing is change. If you want to change something, especially yourself, that means you do not stay the same. It is an obvious truism, but often forgotten. The process of transformation, for me, the most important energy, the most important state of triggering that change is intent. What is my intent? My intent, if you say and mean it, it's not just words, it's here. My intent is I want to become my true, infinite, all-aware self. I want to use that expansion to contribute to the world becoming a nicer place to live, a more compassionate, a more loving, a more caring place to live. Okay, if that's your intent, and you put out that intent and mean it, then through a process that I call vibrational magnetism, that intent is going to lock on to information fields within its frequency that we call people, places, ways of life, jobs, locations, experiences, and it's going to bring them towards you. And what happens to a lot of people when this process starts is they fall into fear, because suddenly their life's falling apart.
Yes.
And you say to them, well, yeah, but that's the life you wanted to fall apart, isn't it? Because you can't change and things remain the same. They're just not going to happen. And the thing is that when things start to, say you speak your truth, because part of my intent is I'm not going to be silent anymore, and you lose your job. Well, that in the first moment is a negative thing, because you fall into fear. I'm not going to pay the bills and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But if you stick with it, then the process of pulling things towards you, because you're syncing, your new intent is syncing with them and pulling them in, people, places, locations, jobs. You're no longer syncing with the frequency fields you were before, so people, the old life starts to go away and disperse, and other things come in. And in that bit in between, there is this upheaval that can often happen as one is replacing the other. And just because speaking your truth means this happens doesn't mean that that's how it's going to be forever, because you're now pulling something else in. Mm-hmm. And you know, when it happened to me, I was a television presenter on the BBC. I was reading the news, I was reading the sport, I was doing outside broadcasts. And very shortly after I saw this psychic and was told I was going to go out on a world stage and reveal great secrets, I got a letter from the BBC. They weren't going to renew my contract anymore. I was out of work. I had no money. I had no income, nothing. And I had no money coming in. And I was living off savings because there was no income. And I was offered another couple of jobs by other television stations, but something said, no, I'm going with this. And for many, many, many years, you know, very little money came in, but somehow enough came in to do what I wanted to do. Enough came in to pay the bills, enough to keep me with a roof over my head and my family and food and stuff. And it's initially you could panic over losing a job in television. Oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? But if you stick with it, something else comes along. Something else comes along, you know.
It's like a magical universe. And what I have found that's helping me is that when changes occur in my life that I didn't expect, or I didn't necessarily think I wanted them at that time or that way or what have you, if I step back and I look at my entire being, which is what you're talking about, when I look at my whole consciousness, my higher self, everything that's involved, I ultimately always know that change is going to ultimately always be for my higher and best good. And if I get out of the way and I don't have all this attachment to the change, then it's pretty cool. All the other changes come in and support that change.
This time last year, after a quarter of a century of, you know, running myself into the ground physically, trying to do as much as I could, my body gave up and I became very, very ill. And I had in mind to do this world tour that I'm just about to start. And as I was laying there, just the other side of this wall, with no energy whatsoever and I'm still trying to function and somehow manage, but everything was an effort. I'm thinking, well, at that time, I'm just coming up to 63 at the time. I talked for 10 hours. I'm doing this world tour. I could hardly lift my head up. And this went on for weeks. I had what they call adrenal burnout.
Oh, right. Yeah. That's me.
And I just looked at the experience of my life. And it did go on for months. I mean, you know, it was like, from March last year to August, I was pretty much in this state. Wow. I'd go to London for a day and come back, and it would take me 2 or 3 days to recover. So bad it was. But all through it, because of my experience of no matter how bad it gets, something always comes along. I knew it was going to be fine. I was going to be fine. What I was experiencing was not fine, but I knew it was going to be fine. And then from September last year, and all the tours being organized, and I'm thinking, oh dear. On a human level, you'd think, am I going to be able to do this? But I knew I would. And then from September, my health just started to suddenly improve. I got very strong. I feel younger now than I've felt for a long time. I feel stronger, fitter, more energy than I have for a long time. And I knew it was coming, even though what I was experiencing was the absolute opposite.
Yeah.
And this is what happens if you. I mean, people call it faith, but if you just know that it's going to work out, it's going to be fine, and then you keep going and you keep going. You don't give up. If you don't have that knowing that it's going to work out, it's leading somewhere. This is for a reason. Then you give up. You walk away and you try to do something else. And when I look back now, from where I am, having written Phantom Self in this period,
interesting.
It seems pretty clear to me that what was happening at that time, when I had no energy at all, virtually, was that the vehicle was being emptied of an old frequency that had run its course. And from September, something different happened. Something changed in me. And people are reading Phantom Self and they're saying, this book is so different to anything you've written before. But I was so different when I was writing it. And I think this process of that illness, that no energy, and then suddenly this energy, this strength, but different, was all part of a process. And so in the experiencing of the illness, it was extremely negative, but it was necessary because it was leading somewhere. And you see how this synchronicity happens.
Yes.
My son suggested last year that we start the tour off in London at a place called the Shepherd's Bush Empire. Because in 1991, this May, 25 years ago, I appeared on a primetime chat show on the BBC when I was in the middle of my initial awakening. I didn't know my name, really. And I went on it. It was called The Wogan Show. And you can see it on the internet, see it on YouTube. And I didn't know where I was, because I've been hit by such a mass of information and concepts, and I was just going through this incredible transformation. But I went on a primetime chat show at the time, and it was at the Shepherd's Bush Empire. And from that chat show onwards, I couldn't walk down any street in Britain without being laughed at. I couldn't go in a bar. That was impossible. There was uproar. I was ridiculed mercilessly and historically. Now, 25 years on, you go through this illness, you get this newfound strength, you're coming around to a world tour, which I think, getting this information out now is so important. And this is the start of a whole new cycle in my life.
Yes.
And I'm starting off the tour where the previous cycle started, in effect, on that chat show when the mass ridicule began. So I'm starting this one on the same stage that interview took place 25 years later, when the audience won't be laughing, but will be listening.
And far more people coming to see you. In fact, I wanted to tell everybody, I met David Icke, I think we both decided it was 1996. And there was maybe 250 people in the room, right? And I was told that we had to visit him offshore because his information was so controversial that they were trying to block him from doing books and tours and things like that within the United States.
Yeah.
And that was
All made up by the organizers.
1996. Now you've got what, tens of thousands of people coming to see you, and it's all over the world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going for the first time to Romania, to Budapest. There's going to be 4,000 people there, and I've never been in the country before, because this awakening is global. It's happening everywhere. I've called it the worldwide wake up because I'm connected, get into what's happening.
Yes.
And you know, so often, you know, that there is a path that's mapped out. The question is, are we going to go with what's necessary to follow that path? And you know, if I had have received that mass ridicule a quarter of a century ago, and since, and run away and hid, then none of this would have unfolded, and I wouldn't be talking around the world. I don't know what I'd be doing now, but no one will have heard of anything I've got to say, and I wouldn't have gone on the journey to uncover what I'm going to say anyway. It's you know, life is ever so simple: choice, consequence, choice, consequence, choice, consequence. And you know, if we want the consequence of a different world, then we have to make the choice of acting in a different way, even if it means doing things we'd rather not do. But I'll tell you this from experience as well. It's a lot worse thinking about it than doing it. It is a lot worse.
That's so true. That is so true.
You think, oh yeah, but what will they do? What will they say? When you do it, it's not as bad as you think it's going to be. You know, I mean, I have to laugh when I think back. At the height of that ridicule, in 1991, I decided that I was actually going to go on a speaking tour of British universities. I mean, that was pure madness on the face of it. So I would go and speak at universities. The madman who's in the papers and all that stuff, and of course, big crowds then would come, not to listen but to mock. And so I was speaking, and I'll tell you a quick story. One of them, it was a university in the Midlands, and this is at the height of the ridicule, and I can't go anywhere. And I walk out on the stage, and I talk in the evenings. Then I talk for about 3 or 4 hours or something, whatever. I walked out on the stage, and the place was packed out, not to listen, like I say, to ridicule. And I couldn't speak for about, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, because of the noise, and it would seem like 10 or 15 minutes anyway. It was a long time. And plastic beer cups were thrown at the stage and stuff like that. And I stood there, and I just stood there looking at them. And eventually, through, it can't go on forever, it died down. And I said to them, "You think I'm mad, don't you? You think I'm mentally ill." And you get the usual, yeah, and it calmed down again. And I said, "So what does that say about you? You've actually paid to come here tonight,
listen to me,
to mock and ridicule someone you think is mentally ill. What does that say about you?"
Could you hear a pin drop after that?
Pin drop. And almost the rest of the night was in silence rather than ridicule. Sure. Because there is this point that we forget, that whatever we do, whatever we say, is not a statement about the target of what we do and say. It is a statement about us. Because it's in what we say and how we act. It's a statement about us, not those we. It's like these people on social media that go on and abuse people. they're making a statement about those they abuse. They're making a statement about themselves, a very unpleasant one actually. Every time they do it. But when you go through that, ridicule, one of two things happens. Either you run away to hide and never be seen again, or you break through the prison that most people live in, which is the fear of what other people think. That is the key prison of all prisons that keeps people in servitude to the beliefs of others. Because once you fall for fear of what other people think, you cease to live your life and you start to live the lives of people you think will find that life acceptable and the one you want to live unacceptable. Thus, you're not living your life, you're living theirs. And therefore, you're no longer you. You is gone. And
David, you really start getting to a place, because I'm speaking from testimony here, you get to a place where you really, really walk with spirit and you have complete faith that where you're going is the right place to go.
Yeah, and you also speak your truth without any concern with how people receive it. Because if people want to disagree with you or whatever, that's their right. You know, this is what people don't understand about freedom of speech. It means freedom of speech. It doesn't mean freedom to say what you agree with. That is not freedom of speech. Because once you have that, someone's, and one of the great freedoms is the freedom to be wrong. Because if we do not have the freedom to be wrong, that means someone's now going to decide what's right or wrong, so that we can only say what they say is right and not what they say is wrong. Of course, throughout history, it's been shown that what was right in the moment has been ludicrous by hindsight, and vice versa. So it's a wonderful example, my experience with the ridicule, of life gives you your greatest gifts brilliantly disguised as your worst nightmare. Because that was a nightmare to experience, a nightmare for my kids. They were laughed at school and followed to school by the press and all that stuff. But they've grown from that experience. I let go of the fear of what other people think. And, you know, when I think about my own, if you like, journey, what needed to go more than anything else if I was going to be in any way effective in doing this? And it was the fear of what other people think. How can you talk about reptilian shapeshifters in the public eye if you care about what other people think? I mean, it's impossible.
I mean, David, it's not like you picked the most difficult thing to break through in society by saying to them, oh, by the way, we're run by a planet of reptilians. I mean, I'll never forget that back in the 90s, you know.
And that, you know, the physical reality is an illusion. I mean, you're not... Yeah. You're not going to say these things if you fear what other people think. So that had to go. And I'm not, you know, going on about my own journey as if it's kind of, you know, so special. I'm using it as an analogy for everybody's journey. And I'll say this too. One of the things about going through life is that if we judge every step, then we're going to make things harder for ourselves. We need to have the if you like, faith, the knowing better that the steps are leading somewhere. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, 5 sense conscious mind is seeing each step. Expanded awareness beyond mind is seeing the journey. And therefore, what appears to the conscious mind to be a terrible thing, like all that ridicule, that level of us knows where it's leading. And then you go further along the road, and suddenly you see, not only I see why that I had to go through that, you say, I'm so glad I went through that because of what it gave me. And it's like, I've used the analogy before of someone in a canoe going down the river. and something goes wrong. The canoe springs a leak or something, and the person in the canoe had this outcome, this desired outcome, wanting to get to a certain place down the river before nightfall. And now he's sprung a leak and he's got to go to the side of the bank. And he knows he's not going to get to where he wanted to get, his preconceived idea, his preconceived outcome. And he's angry and he's fed up. And he's sitting there thinking, I'm so unlucky. Things always go wrong for me. God, why did it happen now? And then someone walks along the bank and says, hey, mate, you were bloody lucky there. What do you mean? If you'd have gone round that corner, there's a massive bloody waterfall, mate. And see, so often, like I say, things happen that the conscious mind reacts to in a certain way. That level actually knows why it was necessary. But because this can see, if you like, the river from source to sea, this can only see till the next bend. And thus this goes along and says, further along, oh, I see why that happened now. Oh, I'm so glad that happened to me. The trick to find equilibrium in the journey is to know when that happens, that you may not understand why it happened, but it happened for a good bloody reason. And eventually you'll see what that reason was. And then you don't get all angry and fed up and self-pitying when that happens there.
Well, you're stepping into a place of trusting life, trusting the way your life unfolds. And like I said, we really do need to adjust our reaction to change. Like we have an aversion to change. And it's just like what you said, everything around us is constantly changing. We think we're in control, but we're not, you know?
The thing is that phantom self so often gets its sense of security from things not changing. My mother, for instance, found security in knowing that next Tuesday was going to be like this Tuesday, and next Friday was going to be like this the last Friday. That things not changing becomes a sense of security in many people. That's why I don't like change. But when you move into expanded levels of yourself, you're going into levels of greater possibility. See, for me, people talk about the infinite awareness in terms of something that is has been and always has been, the all that is and ever can be. And you know, you look at that from a five sense point of view, where everything's disconnected from everything else, and you say that's ridiculous. Nothing can be all that is and ever can be. Well, something can, and that's all possibility.
Yeah.
That's what that's describing, all possibility. All possibility is all that is, has been, and ever can be. That's what it is. And once you start to get a bit closer to that sense of all possibility, then change is encompassed because it's an expression of all possibility. The further you come away from that, the more you're seeing few possibilities, and you start to get security from things not changing.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah.
And this is why when you do start to expand your awareness and you follow that intent and you mean it, your life changes. Your life doesn't stay the same. It can't. And the life that's changing is the one you wanted to change. So go with it and encompass it. And people might go out of your life because they're no longer vibrationally attaching to you anymore. Because
exactly.
they're not, but other people will come in. And people that are changing and expanding with you, they will stay with you because they've still got, as you change, they change, that vibrational connection is still there. So they don't go out of your life. And it's It's just the way things are. And of course, when you are running a prison, you don't want things to change, do you? You don't want the bars to change. You don't want the doors to unlock. You don't want the walls to fall. Prisons don't change because prisons are there to enslave people in something that doesn't change, called enslavement. And this, therefore, that virus force that is behind all this doesn't want things to change. And so part of the Phantom Self program is to dislike change. It's the same process as having a prisoner not wanting to get out of jail because they don't want the bars to move, because that would be change, and I don't like change. I've got used to them bars. I'm very happy with them bars, and so I don't want them to move because things will change, won't they? And this is how it all plays out. You want the prisoners to want to stay in jail. That's what fear of change is, and finding security from non-changing situations. That's what that is. It's the program telling the prisoner that they want to stay in the cell.
Well, David, I cannot thank you enough, seriously. And I know I'm speaking for a lot of people as to the trail that you have blazed, because you're allowing people like myself to follow in your footsteps. And I am honored to interview you today, truly.
Oh, how kind. Very nice. I've really enjoyed it. I've spent all these years uncovering manipulation of world events, engineered wars, engineered terrorist attacks, manipulated banking systems, and all the things, vaccinations and GMO, all these things that people need to know about. And I've done it because I felt people needed to know about them. Yeah. And I still do, and I still do it. But my passion is the kind of things we've been talking about. It's understanding the nature of reality and how we create reality by our own state of being, and how we can be who we truly are, as opposed to what we've been manipulated to believe we are. These are the areas that I've always that actually drove me into this whole arena. Like I said earlier, asking, why isn't this taught in the schools? Why isn't it on the television? Why isn't it in the newspapers? And it's still that which drives me, because we can know about 9/11 and we can know about banking scams. We can know about all these things. We can know what the movie says. We can watch the movie every day. But if we're going to change the movie, we have to change that which is creating the movie. And funnily enough, that's us.
Yes.
It's great news, because
that
means we can change the movie when we're the ones collectively projecting it. Yeah. We're projecting the movie at the moment collectively based on a perception download that leads us to certain perceptions, thus creating a certain movie. What we have the power now to do is to ditch the download and change the movie. And that's what it's all about.
Thank you. Thank you. And I want to remind everybody, the sky is the limit. There are no impossibilities, as David has said. There are no finite solutions. There's nothing but infinite solutions for us to take this where we want to go and create a setting where we truly are creating heaven on earth. There is nothing too far out there that we cannot create or manifest or attract into our field and bring this forward. But we can't keep looking outside at all the mass population and expect that to be where the change is. The change will occur with this audience, clearly, who have the wherewithal, who not only, and I was going to bring this up, who not only have amazing intuitive gifts where you can do that work on the inner plane, you can counteract the Illuminati frequencies and circles that are going on and the black magic and things like that. We have the ability, if we just go and do it, we have the ability to counteract this and stop it. That's just on an energetic level, David. That's not even on taking action, according to your worldwide tour. We have so many tools at our at our fingertips. And one thing that I am very proud of is Galactic Connection has provided a phenomenal resource to get people started in that area. And we have copious numbers of testimonies where when you have these particular very, very ancient implants removed, that's just the first starting point, your life is never going to be the same. I mean, it's going to be like, you know, but it's like what David said, with that, you've got changes. You've got all kinds of changes in your life that are going to occur. How badly do you want your life to change? How badly do you want to bring more peace and beauty and harmony and love and justice to this planet and stop child sacrifice and stop the misery and people starving to death and war and bloodshed? We talk about it. What are we going to do to stop it? So.
Choice and consequence. Choice and consequence. And it's not just an individual thing, it's a collective thing. Choice and consequence. We are the world and the world is us. We want to change the world, we change ourselves. And the world must change because it's a reflection of us collectively. And the manipulative force knows that. That's why it wants us into a certain level of collective perception, because that creates a certain expression which we call human society. And we don't have to change it in the physical. We can't change it in the physical because there is no physical. We change ourselves, and thus the collective world must change to reflect that. It can't do anything else. It's simply, in this world anyway, the law of physics.
Yes. Look how powerful we are just knowing that. So I want to thank David Icke, as well as all of you out there. Please, please check out davidicke.com. You can also click on the link for the banner. There will be banners on Galactic Connection's website. You can click on that. That'll take you over to the page for all of the different areas and places he will be touring all over the world. But he is in my neck of the woods, going to be in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and of course, New York. So please check that out. Support his work. He really, truly is the trailblazer to bring such a ridiculous thoughts such as reptilians running our planet, and which is now proven to be very much the case. So anyway, David, thank you. Love you.
Thank you.
Love you.